There's a nuclear war which has come very close many times, sometimes by accident, pure accident. I could give some examples which are harrowing, but sometimes by reckless actions. The threat is now increasing. Some of the leading mainstream specialists, nuclear strategists, people like William Perry, former defense secretary, argue that the threat of nuclear war today is greater than it was during the Cold War. Today. And others agree. There's a journal called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. It's the major journal of atomic scientists. It opened right at the beginning of the nuclear age. In 1947, 2 years after the atomic bombing, they established what they call a Doomsday clock, a clock with a minute hand. And the question is, how far is the minute hand from midnight? Midnight means termination. We're done. Every year they collect a group of specialists, experts, to try to set the minute hand. 2 years ago, they moved it 2 minutes closer to midnight. Now 3 minutes to midnight, which is very close, the closest it's been since the early 1980s, when there was a major war scare. We almost came to war. So it's not just William Perry, plenty of others. Incidentally, when they moved it to midnight, it was not just because of the threat of nuclear war. It was also because of the failure of governments to deal with the increasing threat of environmental catastrophe. And it's serious. So just take one element, rise in sea levels. That's not in question any longer, that sea levels are rising, in fact, faster than they have in recorded history. Just consider a country like Bangladesh. It's a low-lying coastal plain. It has hundreds of millions of people. As the sea level rises slightly, those people are going to have to flee. The chief environmental scientist of Bangladesh recently warned that tens of millions of people are going to have to flee in the coming years just from sea level rise. And he made an interesting comment. He said that if we lived in a just world, these people would be admitted into the rich countries, the United States, England, and others, because those are the countries that are responsible for it and have the capacity to absorb them. We think we have a immigrant crisis today, which is non-existent. What's it going to be like when tens of millions of people are fleeing from rising sea levels? And that's just the beginning. Just keep to South Asia. The water supply of South Asia comes mostly from glaciers in the Himalaya mountains. They're melting. What happens when they disappear? They're melting pretty fast. There goes the water supply for South Asia. Couple of billion people. In India alone, right now, there are already about estimated 300 million people who barely have access to water. What's going to happen then? It's all over the place. Our coastal cities are going to be disappear. And the extreme weather events will increase. They're already, right now, there are about one person per second is fleeing from the effects of severe weather. That's more than the number of refugees, and that's going to increase. We're facing a major disaster unless something's done. The fact that in the richest and most powerful country in world history, which is going to shape what happens for the future, there's a major political party, the one that happens to dominate Congress right now, which simply denies that it's happening. They have a policy about global warming. Forget it. It's not happening. Okay? It's hard to find words to describe this. That means that there's, in the most powerful country in world history, the most educated, the major advantages, a major political party is saying, let's race to the precipice as quickly as possible. And there's no comment on it. Try to find a comment on that fact. I mean, what it really means is that this is the most dangerous organization in world history.
The Republican Party?
Take a look. Is that an exaggeration? in the primary, Republican primary, every single candidate said it's not happening, with one exception. John Kasich, who's supposed to be the sensible moderate, he said, yes, it's happening, but we shouldn't do anything about it, which is worse. So that's 100% refusal. Okay, the winning candidate denies that what's happening is happening and says we should make it worse. We should use more fossil fuels, including coal, which is the most polluting. We should eliminate environmental regulations. We should refuse to help poorer countries move to sustainable energy, as was agreed in the Paris negotiations last year, which he wants to dismantle. So in other words, let's race to the precipice as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the threat of nuclear war is increasing, with very provocative actions on both sides. And there's very little, specialists are concerned, but it's not part of the general kind of conversation.